Hi everyone, it's Rachel here with the Shades of Orange, and today I'm here to do a really fun recommendations video, and that is about horror books with good endings, which, if you think about it, should just be a video of here are fantastic horror books. However, I will admit that a lot of my favorite horror books have really bad endings, and that's the fact that the horror genre in general is kind of known for not always landing it. And popular authors like Stephen King have definitely become a running joke. The fact is that a lot of the horror books we love just kind of peter out, or the climax just doesn't entirely work. But despite that, we love the stories, so we look the other way. I'm especially bad for doing that. I think compared to a lot of other reviewers, I can forgive a good book for a bad ending. If I enjoyed the experience, if I enjoyed the journey, I'm okay even if the ending didn't leave a punch. However, I did want to put together a list of books that had particularly good endings. In many cases, the endings really elevated the entire reading experience for me. And so if you are someone who is really sensitive to a good ending that can really make or break whether or not you enjoy a book, these are horror books that I recommend you check out. All that being said, let's get started. The first book I want to talk about here is The Nightmare Room by Chris Sorensen, and this follows a couple that move back to the man's hometown because his father is aging, getting sick, and has moved into a nursing home. They go there to take care of him. They end up moving into an old farmhouse, and the man works as an audiobook narrator in the basement. Strange things ensue because the house is possibly haunted or something is going on. The couple is also dealing with the recent death of their young son, and so going through the grieving process. Now, this is a book that I really love because it takes the haunted house genre and turns it around. It's more psychological and very focused around those family dynamics. It gets very emotional, and so I enjoyed the entire book, but I really like the ending, and it's one of those endings that is going to be a little bit controversial. I have heard other reviewers feel differently about the ending, but for me personally, I was left with a jaw-dropping wow ending. I loved it. It's not something I personally see enough in horror, and I was just really delighted by it. It was just something that I did not expect. I didn't think the story was going to go in the direction it did, and so when an author can surprise me, this book definitely caught my attention. It's a reason it's been a favorite of mine, and this is the first book in the Messy Man trilogy, and the other books have good endings, but this one especially is the one that sticks out for me. So I always love to recommend it to people that are looking for something different in their horror books. The next book I want to talk about is Ghost Radio by Leopoldo Gout, and this follows a young man who is living in America and is creating a ghost radio show that is based off of a radio show that he heard back when he was a child and was in a car accident and ended up in the hospital in Mexico. And so when he was there, he heard this man's account. Basically, people would call in and tell their ghost stories, and he found the show to be so memorable that when he grew up, he wanted to recreate it in America, and the show really does take off and does very well. So the story is partially about him and his girlfriend going about their days, and then it's also interspliced with his time on the radio, getting these different stories being told. So it's kind of a story within a story setup. And I will say that I was intrigued by this story, but I'll be honest, the actual plot was very meandering. It's very slow paced. You kind of go in and out of these little stories that don't really seem to be connected. And while I was enjoying this, while it is a fairly short book, I just wasn't sure where it was going. I didn't think it was going to go anywhere. And at one point, I hate to admit this, I was tempted to put the book down. But I am so glad that I continued on because it ended up being one of my favorite horror book endings ever. I really feel like this book just pulled everything together. It was slow and creepy and meandering for a reason, and once you realize what the author was doing, which I did not figure out until the very, very end, so I hope you have that same experience, I was just wowed by it, and I love to recommend this one. I do recommend if you can do the audiobook version because of that radio aspect to it, and it's narrated by one of my favorite actors. It's so well done. Even if this book feels a little bit slow, I just really would encourage you to keep going. The payoff is absolutely worth it, and I would just love more people to pick up this hidden gem because I love it. Next, I want to talk about Pet Sematary by Stephen King, who I actually mentioned at the beginning of this video. And that's because you probably know that Stephen King has a really bad reputation for just messing up his endings, for just having them not work. And even people who are die-hard Stephen King fans, for the most part, are very open and willing to admit that his endings tend to be really bad. So I did actually want to include this book here because despite being written by Stephen King, who I have a very hit or miss relationship with, and I've criticized many of his endings, cough cough, I'm thinking about Cell right now, but in this case with Pet Sematary, I thought he nailed the ending. I thought the very ending was just so creepy, so disturbing, and really left an impact on me. It's an ending I still think about to this day, and highly, highly recommend. If you don't know, of course, it's a story of a couple who move to a new town and a new house with their children. They are by this pet cemetery where their neighbor warns them not to bury their pets, and terrible things ensue in this story. This book is emotional, and it's just one of my all-time favorite stories, period. But if you're looking for a Stephen King book that has a really good ending, in my opinion, this is one of his best endings, at least of all the books I've read by him. There's a reason this is, again, one of my favorites. From there, I want to talk about Mind of Winter by Laura Kashiki. This is a story that is set on Christmas Day following a young family. The man goes off to pick up relatives from the airport, and so the wife is left with their teenage daughter to wait them out in this blizzarding storm. While they are waiting, the woman keeps thinking about the time when they adopted their young daughter from Russia, and over again in her mind she keeps thinking that something followed them home from Russia. This is a book that, again, kind of like Ghost Radio, is one that is very slow paced. It feels very meandering. It feels like a book without direction, and the phrase "something followed them home from Russia" is repeated over and over and over again. And when I was reading this, I had no idea where the story was going. I wasn't really sure if I was enjoying it or not, and I just thought that the author had no idea how to close out the story. But then I was completely impressed, completely surprised, and this book had one of the most jarring, devastating endings I have read, and oh my goodness, I really loved it. If you're looking for a book that is disturbing in a different way, this is horror but not in the traditional sense. This is one that has a really strong ending, and I just would love more people to check it out for themselves because it totally delivered in that department. Again, it's a book you have to be patient with, you have to go along with the story, but it's absolutely worth it. Next, I want to talk about The Good House by Tiana Reeve Dew, which follows a mother who is preparing for a July 4th party at her family's home when she finds that her son has committed suicide. The story is then told over different timelines. You get to see her as she is grieving this horrible, horrible loss, and the story is also told in the past as we get to find out what happened to the son in the time leading up to his untimely, sad demise. This book is very character focused, it's very relationship focused, and it is a longer book, but it is a book where the payoff is absolutely worth the time that you will take to invest in it. I enjoyed the book the whole way through. I just think that Tiana Reeve Dew does really good character work. I found the teenage son to be very realistic and relatable. He's moody, and I could also relate to the mother who is trying her best, trying to balance being the cool mom with also being strict enough and raising her son right, and you get different perspectives along the way. And like I said, I did enjoy the story the whole way through, but I thought it was a good book. I liked it, and then the ending happened, and it's an ending, again, that I personally really like to see in books. And so for me, it took the book from being a good book to a great book and ended up on my favorites list for the year that I read it. And there's a reason for that. So I can't really explain why I liked it so much without giving away the ending, but if you have similar taste to me, and if you enjoy these types of endings, you will really love it. It's not going to work for everyone, but If it does, you'll love it. I wish I could say more, but I just needed to go tell you to read it because regardless, the whole book is good. But to me, the ending really pulled everything together in a really satisfying way, if that makes sense. Finally, I want to end the video by talking about Rosemary's Baby by Ira Levin, which follows a couple that move into a new apartment building. Their neighbors come to meet them and they all seem a little bit strange and too involved in their lives. Soon the couple become pregnant, and so we follow the couple through their pregnancy as the woman tries to navigate the ins and outs of all that, as the neighbors just start to get more and more involved and a little bit more weird. I had the luxury of picking up this classic without knowing anything about it. I had never seen the movie, and I'm really happy to say that I got a fantastic experience because I went in blind. I think a lot of people generally have watched the movie, but if you want a book with a really good payoff, I loved the ending. I had no idea it was coming and I thought it was fantastic. Again, this is a book where you just have these moving parts, you have these characters moving in and out of the narrative, and I just did not know what was happening. I did not know where it was going, and I also underestimated this book. I didn't think it would get as dark as it did because it was a cute old classic, and I'm always under the assumption that old horror books can't be as scary because they're written in olden times. That is not true. I have completely taken back that old assumption because books like this have really impressed me. So if you want a short little horror classic with a fantastic ending, I definitely recommend Rosemary's Baby. The book absolutely delivers a powerful punch and I loved it. It was bananas. So that's it. We've made it to the end of the video here. I would love to hear down below which of the books you are planning on picking up. And also, without giving away any spoilers, I would love to hear what is a horror book that you think has a really good ending. I've also thought about doing a video where I talk about books that I really like that have bad endings. So horror books that were really good and then totally missed the mark. Would you be interested in watching that? Let me know, because I definitely could film a video like that because I've read a lot of books that fit that description, let's be honest. So otherwise, if you're new to my channel, consider subscribing. I do read a lot of horror as well as thrillers, science fiction, fantasy, and some true crime. You can help me out by giving this video a thumbs up, sharing it around online in places like Twitter, Reddit, Instagram, etc. And if you hit that little notification bell, you'll never miss a video from me. Thanks so much for watching. Talk to you again soon. Okay, bye-bye.